Masterclass, the blueprint for building an offshore workforce, specifically for the Chief Operating Officer role. I'm so excited to share this content with all of you today. I got a chance to speak for the COO Alliance, which I'll share here recently. Big organization of chief operating officers from $10 to $300 million operations, and just got incredible feedback on this content. So I'm excited to bring it to all of you, a version of that, and to give you insight on exactly how you can build and integrate an offshore workforce from where you sit in your particular role when it comes to outsourcing. So we're going to jump right in here. It's going to be an hour session here. I promise to make this high-paced, high energy for all of you. Those of you who are sitting in the COO role, right? You may know the world of offshoring exists. In fact, I know you do, right? We know it exists, and just like we know AI exists. But just like I saw in that room, it's like, where do I begin? Where do I start? How do I figure out how I can apply? How can I trust it? Well, we're going to go through all of that and more today. So everybody jump on and let's get into it. So real quick, a housekeeping for those of you that registered to attend. My team should have sent you just a interactive worksheet that we've got here. I'm actually pull the live one up here on the screen. You can quickly see. There we go. So this is a little 2-pager that'll just give you a little thing that you can work through. As I've had a chance to speak on this to organizations all over the world, 300 plus organizations, and most of the continents out there. This is content that we'd like to make interactive and engaging with high takeaway value. So this will be just a quick little worksheet that you can use. You can print off or have it digitally that we can complete as we go through the process. And we're going to be filling it out as we go, and I'll prompt you as we get to each piece of it. And on the second page, it shares a little bit more about us and our model and kind of how we operate. And if there's an opportunity to work with you as a part of this journey, we love it. But if nothing else, I want you to walk away with tremendous education and insight, just like I saw from that room of COOs when I got a chance to speak on this not too long ago at a big organization, and see all the COOs that we're working with at different stages that you can see yourself and your business through that lens. All right, so jumping back to our slides here. Another thing I'm going to have for you is just a bunch of resources as well. So got a bunch of tools. I love sharing resources and content. So if you'll just send an email to tools@outsourceaccess.com, just put COO in the subject line. You don't have to write a note or a message. And got a bunch of great stuff we're going to send your way. First of all, the COO's Guide to Leveraging Offshore Teams. You can see the cover of that here on my screen right now, where we have put together an exact framework specifically for people that sit in your role in the COO role, right? We're going to give you 700 tasks that you can outsource by division. So we've done over 6 million hours of outsourcing in our business over the last 6 years. So we're going to share with you over 700 of them, the exact task organized by operations, marketing, sales. You can see exactly types of things you can outsource. A top 200 tools to automate and delegate that we use that you can take a look at that are free or low-cost tools that can add to the automation process. And then our 2-question exercise template, which I'll be getting to and talk about how we use that process to really extract constraint points within the organization. And then I'll share as well, information. If you're a part of a mastermind group or an organization and you'd like for me to kind of come in and do an interactive, I do deep dives with mastermind groups, specifically within your businesses. I can get super specific to your needs and requirements. We're going to be touching on case studies today, but would love to have an opportunity to do that, and so I'll share some information. So just shoot an email to that email address, put COO in the subject line, hit it off, hit send, and my team will send that information to you. All right. And I thought I'd share real quick here, give a shout out to Cameron Harrell with the COO Alliance. I got a chance to speak. He has an entire mastermind. I mean, Cameron Harrell was the COO that kind of helped 1-800 Got Junk, kind of grow and expand, over $100 million, and put together the COO Alliance. And thank for him to leverage the work we've done with similar organizations and with COOs at their conference they had in Vancouver with 60 plus COOs and 50 different industries in the room. It was really fascinating to share some of this content and get just amazing eye-opening feedback from everyone, how this kind of gave them a new perspective on the whole world of offshoring and outsourcing. So check them out, COO Alliance. You can check out good Cameron Harrell, got some great books as well, the Second in Command podcast, so check it out. So real quick, the agenda here today, right? I'm going to give a quick introduction, brief background on myself, not a deep dive life story, quick why behind sort of this path, doubt, fears, and concerns that people have when it comes to outsourcing and offshoring, right? These word bubbles that pop above. Then where do I get started? And case studies that can validate your path ahead. And we'll be doing this little worksheet as we go through the process, okay? So let's, and as I shared, right, this is part of what we're going to be dealing with. People have doubt, fears. They know that the offshoring world exists, but these are all the questions that come up from, COOs and your team members. Is this my industry, time zones, competency, language, skills? How do I integrate it with my people? What can they actually do, right? Well, we're going to be dumping into all of that and more as we get into this content together. Because ultimately, this is about this exact issue, right? And all of us can know about the proverbial wearing all the hats, right? But do you and your staff wake up every day doing what you love that brings the most value, right? And that's one of the biggest questions that you got to ask yourself, and are you in your genius zone, right? And typically we're not, because there's not enough time, money, speed, or knowledge to get to the things we really want to get to. And, we don't live in that place. So part of this path is going to share how do you and your staff get to your genius zone, right? It ultimately delivers the most value for the company in terms of profitability, efficiency, right? But it's also what makes for happier employees, right? So it's the grand irony of offshoring actually makes for happier U.S. employees, not necessarily replacing them, as I'll talk about some of the case studies here. And a big element, the big value this is going to bring is it's about being able to preserve cash and drive profitability. Especially those of you in the COO role, that, fixed expense is typically this stair step, right? You got to make these big capital expenditures, and revenue, unfortunately, goes like this. And, you have these cash flow pinches, right? Kind of in between. So part of what I'm going to share here is a way that you can incrementally grow the organization, and I'll share through case studies, with much lower kind of fixed expense incremental jumps, right? Particularly when it comes to staffing side of things. But you can drive revenue. And I'm going to show you ways you can drive revenue in a steeper way that maybe you hadn't even experienced. And what does that do? It creates big cash flow breathing room, right? So as we know, that translates. So when you get a full-time staff into an organization, right, as I'll talk about, different paths you can go down to hire offshore, for $15,000 to $25,000 a year, all in, somebody full-time integrating into the business, it's game-changing, right? How you can make dollars stretch and what you can have them engage in. And at the end of the day, a lot of this, it's not necessarily about affordable and offshore. It's just about talent, right? I mean, that's the situation that we're in now more than ever. And so the fact that it's affordable and the offshore is definitely a huge bonus, as I'll talk about. But really, it's just talent, and you're going to be blown away by the talent I'm going to be sharing of a lot of the staff here today, and the impact that they're having on businesses. From the Philippines with 4-year college degrees, doing sophisticated, integrated stuff that is really impressive, right? That a lot of people don't even realize that's kind of part of the equation of exactly what's in the toolbox of some of these offshore staff. Briefly, my background, long story, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia here, grew up here. I kind of grew up in a family business type of environment where there was a whiteboard hanging over the fireplace, kind of growing up, always ideas flying around. I had a toy rental business in 3rd grade, a tutoring company in high school, knew I was going to go the entrepreneurial path. Ended up going to college, ended up graduating from Wharton Business School. I was going to come back down to Atlanta and do investment banking for a couple of years, earn some good cash, but ultimately go down the entrepreneurial path. Well, the company I was going to work for ended up going under right before I was supposed to start. And so I had a fork in the road, and I chose to start my entrepreneurial journey. Had some other job offers with some other companies, but started my entrepreneurial path. And so my first company in the kind of nutrition, pharmaceutical space, another company in the nutritional product space. And my last company, which led me into this whole world of offshoring, is we manufacture and distribute teeth whitening products, right? And the reason why I have my family up here, which I'll talk about here in a second, is the impact that this has had, not only from a business, but from a personal standpoint, right? The elevation and lift I've had personally by going down this path and this journey. So in growing my last business, we manufactured products. We had a disaster happen with one of our products. Cash got tight. And this is, going on 10 years ago. I had to figure out how to leverage the world of offshore. I'd read about it, heard about, Tim Ferriss's 4-hour work week. I became a massive student, and I learned how to identify and find talent from all over the world that can make a huge difference in my business. And marketing, operations, sales. Helped me save that business from that product disaster that we had, and became a massive student of it. And so we ended up selling that business to our manufacturer. I decided to go down that path. And so for a number of years, I did a lot of speaking and educating on it. So I was bringing this message to the small to medium business, world, from startups to, multi-million, $100 million companies. This is me actually got a chance to speak on stage at John Maxwell's Leadership Center. I don't know if you know John Maxwell, just the most prolific leadership minds. And when I got a chance to speak after him at his own Leadership Center in Atlanta, I knew I was hitting home with this subject matter. So did a lot of speaking, educating, and then I kept getting encouraged, like, Brad, why don't you launch your own offshore, operation? So I did that, and in 2019, we opened up Outsource Access, and I'll share why the Philippines. But we grew to 500 employees in about 4.5, 5 years, servicing 75 different industries, thousands of companies, over 6 million hours of work now at this point, going on our 6th year, across all divisions: marketing, operations, customer service, everything kind of in between. So I've lived and breathed your world, your business from every possible place, right? And there's actually a picture of our Christmas party. Couldn't quite get all 500 there, but you can see the size of the room. But it's just been life-altering for me. Loved being in this industry, loved the impact we're having on our clients and our staff. And so I'll share a little bit more about that journey, but that's kind of how, we got to where we are. And we've been fortunate enough along the way. We won 8 global national awards at Outsource Access because of the incredible impact we're having with our clients and the incredible lift we're creating for our staff in the Philippines. It's just been an amazing win-win. We got a chance to reach the top 7% of the Inc. 5000 here in the U.S. We first made it on, and a number of other awards. So all this is to say is to validate that, I've lived and breathed this content. I'm going to be sharing from a place of experience and case study, not theory. All right. And for those of you familiar with EOS, we actually run EOS as actually our team in the Philippines, and during my last strategic summit there where we were doing our strategic planning. So, we're fanatical about systems process, whether you're using scaling up or EOS, or Pachalencioni's, 6 types of working genius. It's a real critical part of our business. And I'm sure it is a part of yours as well. And, I'll just share a couple of things as, if you're, leaders or learners, as Vern Harnish, who spoke at a conference I was at the other day, shared, I just share from a COO standpoint of where you sit, just a couple of books that may be really helpful for you that helped me in growing my business and scaling. One, Necessary Endings. A lot of us struggle with just terminating and going down a different path, struggle with, people that we've kept in the journey too long or different roles. Highly recommend Necessary Endings. Gave me a piece to make some tough decisions I should have made earlier on. A book called Predictable Success. Can't say enough about this book. It really isolates the 4 stages of growth, and the 3rd stage being whitewater, where things can kind of unravel and become challenging as you grow and scale. In our business, grew into 500 people, 4.5 years. Right, we had to navigate our growth threshold. Can't say enough about that book. And then another book by actually a buddy of mine, Gene Hammett and his wife Amanda, called How to Have Tough Conversations. I've realized that this is one of the root cause issues, in most, honestly, any, family dynamics, personal relationships, and in business, is people aren't willing to have difficult conversations and allow the negative things to go on too long. So highly recommend How to Have Tough Conversations. Great book that gives a very good framework of how to have difficult conversations, that you need to have in your personal life and in your business. And Jim Collins has been a huge guiding principle for me. I wanted to share this. Anybody that's read Jim Collins' books, everybody knows Good to Great and so forth, but most people don't know. If you go to his website, jimcollins.com, and you click on concepts, he has a 20-minute video where he teaches all the principles and puts them all in one singular concept called the MAP that is on his website, that I cannot say enough, that it brings all the concepts of all his books into one framework: disciplined people, disciplined thought, disciplined action to be built to last. So those are just a couple of learnings from my growth journey. Those of you sitting in this role that I thought may be helpful, and I'd share along to you. So that kind of sums up my world, right? I kind of break it into 4 buckets: building companies, sharing, got a podcast, do a lot of speaking, got a chance to speak for TEDx, part of EO, been a part of EO now 14 years, joined YPO a couple of years ago, part of Real Leaders, and then giving, huge part of giving back is a big part of our life. Compassion International we're involved with helping fund children's centers around the world. And I got a chance to speak at the United Nations headquarters for the SDGs. And that's a big part of what we do at Outsource Access, is give back in that capacity. So that's a little background that kind of led to my path, and hopefully a few learnings and books that are helpful for you along the way. So as I shared, that's the point. This isn't theory. This is real life case studies and experiences. All right. So the big place for you to start, and this is kind of where we kick off with our worksheet that I shared with everybody ahead of time, is this, which is get clarity. What are your constraint points, right? And we had a little more time. This is where I kind of pause, and when I'm speaking in front of audiences and groups, we do this kind of short worksheet. And I have everybody pause and just say, where are your biggest challenges right now in your business, right? Just what are your top 3? All of us could spend all day listing a bunch of them, but as you think across the divisions of the business, strategy, sales, marketing, lead generation, maximizing the software that you run your business on, financial, AR, AP, right, and down the board, which division is it in, and what is your biggest challenge that you're navigating, right? Just boil that down, top of mind. What do you keep hearing recurring? What are you personally navigating and dealing with? Just drop down whatever that division is. And it may be all the same, right? All your problems may be in sales, right? So it may be problem number one, sales challenges, lead generation, maybe sales, finding good salespeople. So maybe in the same division or maybe multiple, but just capture that and capture your biggest challenge. And we're going to circle that back to your automate and delegate roadmap as we get to the end of this on the back half of the presentation. So that's in your worksheet that you get access to, and we'll make sure we drop it as well in the notes that you can see on the LinkedIn Live down below. All right. So real quick, let's talk about doubt, fears, and concerns. This is one of the biggest places that people struggle when it comes to offshoring and outsourcing. They know it exists, right? But got all these concerns about going down that path. And when I was speaking to this whole room of chief operating officers, I was just seeing heads nod the entire time, like that they get it. They understand exactly what they're navigating. So I'm going to address some of those here for you before we kick off, right? So first of all, why the Philippines, right? So there's a bunch of great places that you can potentially offshore to all over the world, right? I chose the Philippines specifically because, from a cultural standpoint, United States controlled it up until 1947, right? So it's completely Americanized education system, English speaking, even more so than Latin American, South American countries, right? Because the U.S. controlled it, right? So they got our entire culture. English is their second language, right? Everybody learns English. Hardworking, disciplined. 800,000 university graduates, per year. Globally recognized as an outsourcing capital of the world. But minimum wage is, $1.25, $1.50 per hour. So you have really competent people that, we can pay way more than that. So they're making more than they've ever made before. And it gives them access to a career and opportunity. And then it's a win-win, right? For those of us that engage that path. So that's and I'll talk about time zones as well in a minute. But that's particularly why the Philippines, why I kind of gravitated, and just their hunger to learn, their hunger to grow, their kind of service mentality to want to deliver great experiences and results. Just been amazing, path. So not to say other countries aren't fantastic, but that's kind of my path and why I chose the Philippines. So I'll play a quick little video here for you, and this will kind of take you down the path that may be helpful as we go down. I want to pull this up here. Got a quick video. I know you'll be able to hear the audio on that portion there. So I'm going to share this one here. It'll take you behind the scenes. When I first kind of launched Outsource Access before I started, I went and visited there so that I could go and welcome to pause it. So that I could kind of go and understand what is this country about. So I hired a guy that took me around the entire country, visited 20 different facilities over 5 days all over. So made a short little video, kind of documentary. So I'll play that video here for you to kind of give you a little bit of behind the scenes from that experience.
Hi, Brad Stevens here, and welcome to Manila, Philippines. If you know anything about me, I'm all about virtual assistants and outsourcing. Been doing it for the last 10 years. We just had a chance to visit 20 facilities over the last 4 days. We visited Manila, Makati, Clark, seeing all the latest that there is to offer with virtual assistants and outsourcing here. We're actually at a co-working location here just in the Manila area. We're doing our quarterly strategy session with two of our main team members, Third and JCell. We actually got a chance to go visit a village. We actually bought for 32 kids and went and delivered for them. It was a really amazing experience. It's all about giving back.
There. So that gives you a sense a little bit of the journey there and what the experience was like. And so, for those of you that haven't been there, I'm sorry, I got to remove that one from the stage. Add this back here. In terms of the technology, the capabilities, right? Kind of behind the scenes. So, some people have been to these countries, some haven't, but I like to show that kind of behind the scenes because it was eye-opening for me when I first went down that path as well, right? So the other perception is, about it being a novelty versus a fundamental change in scaling. So those of you that have read, Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week, he talks about how you can find these people, these amazing people on the other side of the world, that can do amazing things, super low cost. You can go sit on a beach all day long, right? Well, that was the perception around a lot of this, and using gig economy platforms like Upwork and Fiverr and so forth. But there's a dramatic shift. This is about a fundamental way of how you scale and grow your business, and you'll see in the case studies that I'll share of people working side by side, with your existing teams and staff, right? Not this novelty concept, right, of just being able to go work on a beach while people are doing your job, right? So it's kind of a shift in mindset. The other thing is about my industry. This won't work in my industry, right? We'll go through this in case studies. I thought that initially, right? We've worked in, like I said, over 85 industries at this point, and there's not a single industry that we have not found impact. How it applies in your industry can vary and differ, right? But industry does not matter at all. Outsourcing is just about cutting costs, right? So a lot of people think, that that's the case. Well, we've found in the course of our work, we have a whole division called Sales Acceleration that our staff do nothing but help support and drive top line revenue. So we actually have a guide. I'll send this to you guys as well, called 33 Ways to Drive Top Line Revenue. I actually have a whole LinkedIn Live just on this topic as well. That you can check out on my LinkedIn Live, kind of history there, where I talk about nothing but ways you can drive top line revenue, and I'll share some of those in the case studies today. Language barriers, right? So this is another one that ends up becoming. Oh, pardon me, guys. This is another one that comes up, right? What about language and how their communication is? So I want to share a video here of J-Cell, my very first VA, who was able to become our COO of our entire operation as we grew. And so I started working with her when I was speaking. I said, J-Cell, can you just have a film crew follow you around and let them hear you communicate so people can see behind the scenes and understand just how well-spoken and great communication Filipinos have. So I'll share a quick video here for you referencing that experience.
I'm Jaisal, and I'm Brad's virtual assistant, and this is how I start my day. Common tasks that a virtual assistant can help you include email management, project management, social media management, overseeing a team of freelancers, and even personal research, planning a travel, and the list goes on. I constantly seek improvement and personal growth, including becoming a certified project manager. In the Philippines, we have a culture of hard work and discipline, but we also strive for work-life balance.
That's it. Talk to you in the next one. Bye!
So I hope that'll give you a little bit of insight, a little behind the scenes, right, in terms of communication, but also kind of behind the scenes in the Philippines. And with J-Cell there, is my very first VA, and just amazing growth in her ability and growing to kind of be a leader in our whole organization. But kind of shows you a little bit of the communication. So if you go to also, you'll see, and I'll add it back here. We got a page on our website called outsourceaccess.com/how outsourcing works. And you can see a bunch of interviews that I've done. When I go to the Philippines, I go in our offices and I sit down and I do a whole interview series with all of our different staff in different industries. So you can hear everything from commercial real estate to e-commerce to manufacturing to legal and more. You can hear me doing interviews, to address the communication, right? And communication skills and competency, which a lot of people, have doubts and fears and concerns about. The other thing is, working, the working conditions in offices, right? What's the working environment and so forth. Well, I'll take and give you a quick little insight. This is actually our offices in the Philippines. So I'll give you a quick insight. This is actually one of our staff that's actually doing a video here that we use to recruit incredible talent in the Philippines and kind of taking them into our office and showcasing. So I'll give you a quick little insight there.
Hi there. Do you want to be a part of an amazing team and work in an office like that? Or work in the comforts of your home? All you need to do is submit the application form, which you can access in 3 different ways. First, you can click on the link on all their social media posts. 2, you can scan this QR code.
So I'll pause there, but I just want to give you a little sense, right, inside of the office, right? And that's actually our space. I was just actually there back in November, but just phenomenal, offices and environments and working environments and so forth. And we let people kind of co-work, both from home and also in our office. So that'll give you a little sense of sort of what the behind the scenes, another one of those doubt, fears, and concerns that people has, right? The next thing is about security and data protection, right? That's another one, particularly sitting in the COO role and kind of have to navigate, right? And I could spend an hour just talking on this one, but there are definitely ways to manage security and data protection. So, a lot of our clients, we have clients that are in healthcare and financial services. So we use a VPN type of platform, like VMware or Amazon's AWS. You may have one of those. And so our staff, we have equipment, but then they log into your VPN environment. So it's a controlled environment. At our company, we actually put everybody through cybersecurity training as well, and then make sure that there's certain software on their equipment. And then, using tools like Dashlane or LastPass to be able to share your logins and passwords, across without actually sharing your username and password. Right, with Dashlane, you can, share and it'll download, a little piece of a cookie on their site and allow them to log in. But if you want to disconnect them, you click one button and disconnect without ever giving them your username and password. So there's definitely ways of managing security and data protection. We've done this with thousands of businesses at this point in all kinds of different high data security environments. So there's a number of different ways to do it, but these are a few of them. Time zones, right? This is another big thing that people have. The Philippines is, I'm in Eastern time zone here in Atlanta, so it's exactly 12 hours off. So the thing is that, there's a culture of working, local, U.S. hours in the Philippines, right? So if you need somebody that's working your local hours, right, which is night shift on their end, it is absolutely very possible and attainable. And in fact, they like, that opportunity because there's some of them that prefer that from a lifestyle standpoint. But I would say that the vast majority, depending on the work that they're doing, are end up being kind of hybrid hours where they're kind of, partly working our time zone, their time zone. So it ends up being a split. When you're doing the initial training with them is more on your own time zone, but then it can kind of end up being hybrid. Like my personal, staff, I haven't had a live conversation in, a year, online. We use a chat. My morning is their evening if we need to do some live chat about things. But a big element is using screencasting, which I'll talk about here in a second, right? Asynchronous communication is the main way that we communicate with our staff, which is really, really effective, right? And so I'll talk about that here next, right? And this comes to communicating and getting things out of your head. And so this also ties to one of the doubt, fears, and concerns about, it's too difficult and time consuming to communicate, right? To get things out of my head. And so if you're not familiar, and more people are becoming aware of it now, when I first spoke on this, literally nobody in the room knew about it. But using tools like Loom and ScreenPal that allows you to record your screen, your voice, and your mouse, records it as a link, and then you can send it over, right? And they watch it just like a video, right? So you can unpack stuff out of your head, right? So I'll show you an example of it here. And then it's a part of the playbooks as well, right? So it's a way you create playbooks. So if you're trying to teach a VA about how to go in and, do something inside of your, software platform. So we got we got a client in the fire protection services base, right? Big business. They use a product called Service Trade is the software that they use. Well, they wanted a VA in the Philippines to start taking on stuff and doing things in that platform. So their staff in the US just did screencast recordings explaining how to do it, sent over the video links. They're able to watch it, right? And able to save it. Now they can reference it in the future, right? So this is an example of one of these looks like here. I'll pop one up on the live stage here.
Hey team, great job on kind of getting this.
So this is one of me doing a screencast recording for our team where I wanted to have something done on our website, right? I had this idea and you'll kind of see it in the screencast here, but this is what happens. You record it. It puts a little circle around your mouse. They can follow it, and you send it over, and they watch it just like a video.
Hey team, great job on kind of getting this award concept displayed on our homepage. But just one quick feedback. I know we're going to do this as a placeholder, this plaque concept, but there's an award concept in the U.S. that's called J.D. Power and Associates, and all the companies that do it. If you Google J.D. Power and Associates, you'll see and do an image search. How companies, when they showcase it on their website, they actually show like a physical image of like this trophy type award, and there's different concepts for this award that we won. So one is the plaque and the other is sort of these two trophy concepts. So I'd like to take this, do a PNG of it with the license logo that we purchased and showcase it here instead with the plaque. So this is a fine for
all right, so you get the idea there, right? So it's something I want to unpack out of my head. And most people much prefer not to type a bunch of stuff out, right? And the thing is, you will do more with the nuances of your voice that you'll explain in your mouse than you ever will, right, if you had to type out a bunch of protocols, right? And now there's more tools that are coming out, like Loom. You go to record, it'll actually create the entire AI protocol kind of right beside it when you're doing it. You've got other tools like Scribe that'll do it. But this is a very simple way to unpack, out of your head, like what you want done, right? And to share another example, so I need to remove that here. And another great application of this, completely unrelated necessarily to outsourcing, is for sales proposals and internal communication. So, as an aside, if you never outsource a thing and never go down this path, right? If you're a company where you got to do sales proposals, or your sales team does, where they send over this big PDF and they wait for somebody to review it and set a follow-up call. Well, what if before they send it, right, pull up that PDF and then do a walkthrough of it, right? And say, hey, John, Brad here with Outsource Access, just want to walk through this proposal here. This means this means this, don't worry about this. It allows you to walk through, and with this, you can do camera on the video as well. So you have a personal connection, and you get to control how they consume that information, right? Where most people open a PDF and scroll right to the price point, maybe never do a follow-up call. So as an aside, it's a great proposal tool, and just for internal communications, right? Internally, if you guys communicate, I know you can do like Zoom meetings and Microsoft Office meetings and Teams and so forth, and you can record those, but it recreates this huge video file. With screencasting or Loom, you can just quickly record something if you want to get it communicated inside the company. So highly recommend you check this tool out, even if you don't use it for outsourcing and offshoring. One of the other perceptions is about poor training and development and growth programs. I can tell you at our company, this shows you, these are our 8 internal programs that we have at Outsource Access of how we support our employees that work with clients in all these different industries, right? We have SOAR, which is our leadership development program. We have social clubs. We have health and wellness programs. We have a total rewards program based on how they perform and other things they can do to earn points. We have one that's my favorite. It's called ISOF, In Search Of. This is where we do personal wellness and personal financial literacy education courses. Happy hour and give backs. So companies, ourselves and others like ours, in the Philippines or otherwise, right, have incredible personal development growth programs. A lot of times we show this to clients, as a part of our sales presentation, and they're blown away. Like, we have more supporting our staff in the Philippines than they do their staff in the US or otherwise. So that's definitely a misnomer. The other thing is about, hey, we're shipping jobs overseas, right? And I feel bad about, shipping jobs overseas. Well, I can't say enough, right? I'd say that 95% or more of what we do in our business and all the companies we've worked with and the 6 million hours that we've done for companies, it's not about placing people, replacing. It's about augmenting existing people, right? It's about getting existing employees out of things that aren't the best use of their time, where they're not adding the most value, or getting to things that aren't being able to get to otherwise, right? These are two individuals. This is Jana. She almost was kind of struggling with, her existing business and almost going down. And because of offshoring and outsourcing, was able to revive her company, ended up hiring 15 people in the United States because she used offshoring to grow and scale her company, right? More cost effective, make her dollar stretch. This is Tom Heiler. I'll talk about this company. They ended up adding 12 to 15 new staff, painters in the U.S. because they used offshore staff from our team to help drive top line revenue in their business, right? So this is much about integration into your existing people. And this is what was a real eye-opening for the COOs that I presented to, is that, this isn't just a third-party vendor that's just call center, what have you. These people are working side by side and alleviating, pressures of my existing, managers and so forth. I'm like, yes, right? And you'll see these examples as I get to it, right? So, getting back to your worksheet that I referenced earlier, right, is there are 3 things that are critical for mindset if you're going to be successful with offshoring, right? 3 key mindsets. So if you're got this thing printed out and doing it as we go here, one is you got to think about everything through the lens of opportunity cost, right? What are you or your key people doing, right? That relative to what they could or should be doing, that's a better use of their time and resources. We had one client that we were working with in the e-commerce space. Their VP of operations was getting crushed with handling all kinds of internal, issues with problem orders and inventory, reconciliations and so forth. Got a staff of ours, plugged it in, learned how to do all that, unplugged the VP of operations out. So now she could go side by side with the owner and work on closing big multi-million-dollar deals, right? So think about through the lens of opportunity cost. You got to have a mindset of leverage. How do I leverage my current people and staff and their time as much as possible? And then third is just agility, right? Knowing how to do this and how you can integrate these staff, into your business at an incredibly low rate, right? It makes your dollar stretch. And if things get tough, right, and the economic environment gets challenging out there, or you lose a big customer, right? We've had people, back during the pandemic, they reduced all their staff down to just a couple of their VAs they had with us because they could afford them, right? And they weren't dealing with additional costs and so forth. And it helped them kind of get through. And, I was able to launch a whole nother company, called One-on-One Connections with a partner of mine named Jason, for, $500-$600, got it out of the ground. because of agility. So this allows you to be agile, to throttle up, throttle down. So those are 3 key mindset elements if you're a COO that's critical and you're in your staff to be thinking as you move down this journey, right? So where do I begin and how? So this is exactly the next piece, right? Got to remove the word why there. Should just be now. But where do I begin and where does it start, right? So hopefully I've given you some foundation of understanding a little bit of the background, right? Where are some of the doubt, fears, and concerns you may have? Because I can tell you about all these great case studies and examples, but none of that matters unless I can kind of get those doubt, fears, and concerns off of your mind, right? So let me jump into exactly some of the how and to begin the journey. And look, I want to share real quick, another positive byproduct of doing this whole thing is you get your processes documented, right? So, one of the things we just do standard out of the gate is anytime we're working with a client, right, is we create a playbook from day one. And so we're fanatical about process documentation. So, and it's 2 ways of processes documentation. One is everything that we're doing for you, right? And you should ask this of any company you go with. We create a playbook so we can document all your processes, right? So that we have it and you own it from day one. So if we ever part ways, you own this as a great benefit. So we document everything, all the workflows that we're doing for you and what have you, written out, and also do screencast recordings as a part of it, right? So it creates redundancy. If we ever need to replace a staff for some reason, or you want to hire more staff in the same function, we've got all that stuff documented so we can take on the sourcing and the training of those individuals. The other thing is if you've got processes you need documented in your business, right? So that client I shared, Tom Heiler, which I'll share more about, that's the first thing that they had us do for them. When they brought somebody on for us, Rika, their first staff, Rika, they didn't have any of their processes documented in their business, right? How they hired people, how they did, invoicing, a lot of their, operational logistics. So she went and kind of interviewed all of their staff, and our staff from the Philippines documented all their processes for them, right? I mean, it's funny aside, she ended up having such an impact on their business. She started there and did a bunch of other things, which I'll talk about. They ended up choosing her as the MVP, right, of their entire company. Suburban Philadelphia painting business recommended her as their MVP to the point of wanting to fly her over from the Philippines to their office in Philly to be a part of their next business, right? So great aside though is process documentation. That's a key element to do this, getting knowledge transfer. And look, if you've got things that need to be documented in your business, right, and you've been struggling to get some of the staff to do it, this is a great excuse to do it, right? Because you bring in a resource with us, and if we're going to work side by side with your team, we're going to document these things so it's a way we can get that stuff done for you, right? So I share this simple 2-question exercise, and I tell you, I know it sounds simple, but sometimes the simplest solutions are the best, right? We've done this with startups to $300 million companies, and it creates an unbelievable runway of constraints, right? So what are they? First, send these 2 simple questions to your key managers and as far down as you want, right? What are you currently doing that you don't feel is the best use of your time, and how many hours per month are you spending on it, right? And give them the psychological safety to actually give you that answer candidly, right? And the key is that second part. A lot of times they're like, well, what's not the best use of your time? What could we outsource and so forth? And people are like, well, I do this, but that doesn't take much time. And I don't this, but that doesn't take much time. When they put a pencil to it, right? It's amazing how many hours add up for certain things, right? So what are you doing that isn't the best use of your time, but put a pencil to how many hours you spend on that per month. I've seen this over and over again where people are amazed. They're like, yeah, I put a pencil to it. Actually, I spend 7 hours a month doing X task that isn't the best use of their time, right? Then the second question is this: what are the things on the radar that you want to be doing or you think we should be doing in this business that we haven't due to time, money, or knowledge constraints, right? So giving them the opportunity from where they sit within their department or where they operate, what do you think within your department, the things on the radar that we should be doing or that you want to be doing that we're not getting to? If you had a magic wand, right? And ask them to speak on things outside of their department as well, right? Because there's sometimes people that are in operations that see things in marketing, that they think we ought to be doing, because they're not in the weeds. It's a great perception, right? So these 2 simple questions, right? And we'll give you a template that you can send out and capture. And I'm saying literally, copy and paste these 2 questions, send them, leave it open-ended. By design, leave it open-ended and say, hey, we're going to come back in a week and I want you to come back with all your answers. And I promise you, you will be blown away by the impact of this. So I'll send you guys a template that you can use. And drop those in there and organize it by the individual, something they're currently doing on the radar, what's the department, what's the task, it's something they're currently doing, how many hours per month. And this is a live example. I mean, took the confidential information out. This is a company north of 20 million or so. And I've seen the same, as I'll share, with a $300 million business, but told the CEO, hey, send these 2 questions to all your key staff and give them a week. And I actually got a chance to do this one in person with them, did a little facilitation, and came back with over 100 items that these staff, with their names that were listed over here, in product design, accounting, tech, marketing, customer support, came back of things they wanted off their plate or things they thought the company should be doing. What was supposed to be an hour meeting turned into 3+ hours, right? And created a massive runway of things for them to focus on when it came to offshoring and outsourcing, right? And this is the example output. I mean, this is one for a company we worked with, $250 million plus operation, been around for 50+ years. And I told the CEO, hey, send these 2 simple questions to all your key managers. They took it and created this entire matrix around it. They were so taken with the outputs of this, created this multicolored matrix as well from it. And we ended up organizing it by, you rank it then by priority, you rank it by impact. Is there a current SOP for that function? And we ended up being able to create 4 roles for them across operations, HR, accounting, executive admin. So this creates a massive visibility into the runway of constraints. And again, if you never outsource a thing, this is a great, great tool to use to unpack where the challenges are in the business. So can't say enough about it. So again, I'll send you the template to do that, but it is a great place to start. But I love this cartoon because it's what's happening, and a lot of times people get caught on their heels. What if we don't change at all and something just magically happens, right? Just like with the world of AI that's going on now, right? Well, this is where everything is going. And when you look at your competitors and you see people that are outpacing you or scaling, right? This is typically the reason, because they have figured this out and they're able to make dollars stretch and do things faster and quicker, right? And there's hundreds of companies out there on tons of platforms available. Our company, Outsource Access, is just one of them. And we think we have a unique angle on kind of what we do, but no matter what you do, I just encourage you to take the leap, right? Start with one project, begin, watch it snowball, getting your team embraced, because this is where everything is going. You got to get on board with offshoring. You got to get bored with AI. And a lot of times you can kind of blend the 2 together for your path ahead, right? And look, I'm happy to share with you. These are other options you can go. There's a company, Virtual Employee, Wing.com, Bruntwork, OnlineJobs.ph. It's a whole Filipino job board you can go post on. If you want to get in the business of sort of posting and recruiting and what have you, you can go down to all kinds of different paths. I just encourage you to go down the path. There's a range. Companies like ours that do a whole advisory and help you figure out the constraints and support you in the journey, and figuring out where and how, and then manage the staff and manage the workflow and strategic advisors and all that kind of stuff. And then there's companies, that you just go post and try and find job boards and bring them on. So wide range of options that are out there. And again, in that top 200 tools, I'll send you guys a bunch of the different platforms you can go find people, but just encourage you to take the first step no matter what you do, right? Because ultimately the goal here is to redefine how you scale your business and your life, right? And I talk about life because it's not just you, but your employees, getting people to their highest and best use. The companies, the impact I've seen on people's lives with this, whether they're employees or the owners, is game changing, all right? So as far as the case studies, I want to jump in and give you some real examples of how this staff is integrated into their businesses, right? And I'll share with you, actually, when I was at that COO Alliance conference, Kion Krippendorf, Google him, amazing speaker. But I showed them kind of the blend of how you can use VAs and ChatGPT. So he had shared, as part of his methodology, these 36 strategies and the 9 Ps concept that he has. It's amazing. He has a company called Outthinker. Check out his book. But it's a way that you can really see where and how you should focus as a company. And but anyway, have my VA go and take his methodology and go into ChatGPT and put our company and identify exactly how and what we could use his 9 Ps, right, across how we could scale and grow all business across the 36 strategies. So anyway, just kind of a quick thing that I did, that was on the fly from that experience. Because look, AI plus a virtual assistant is unbelievable, right? It's like 1 + 1 = 4. And I'll share some examples because we train all of our staff in AI as well. And so it's a key element that, you can bring to the table. You bring the 2 of them and it's a powerful combination. As an example, this is a painting company that was asking us to support them. And ended up coming up with an entire strategy. They wanted to start building relationships with property managers and wanted to do a massive outreach initiative by LinkedIn and by email and so forth. So our team, our AI team, or our VA team and their strategy team, we put together a whole AI game plan and did ChatGPT and came out with an entire word by word outreach game plan on exactly what to send by email, exactly what to send by LinkedIn outreach with a target conversion rate and strategies, and then had it all put into a whole matrix, right? So just showing the power, and I'll share some more examples of that. As you kind of blend these two together, it's game changing. And so for me, it started on a personal basis, and I'll share a couple of quick examples of this because, you sit in the COO role, right? Or, if you're in the C-suite role, but these are the types of things. When I first started, I got my VA and you're limited only by your creativity. And I share this through the personal lens, but also in the business lens, because just try it, see what they can do. You'd be amazed. One example, my watch was broken. I was trying to get it fixed and I started working with Giselle and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to send it to her. Took a picture of it, sent it to her. She was able to zoom in, find the manufacturer online, go fill out all their paperwork they're in Dallas, filled out all the paperwork. She was able to zoom in, see the serial number on my watch, logged into my UPS account using Dashlane, create a shipping label, and had it all in my inbox the next morning, right? So I went from sending a picture to having all the shipping, and documentation in my inbox. So I just had to print it off, drop it in a box, and ship it, right? We were having to do a bunch of renovations in our last house. We had mold issues. We had to rip out all the drywall. It was a disaster. I was like, how can I not have this suck my time and my wife's time? So I just took a picture of it. I did a video narrative of like, hey, here's what we need done. I need drywall replacement here, here, and here. And I just sent the video to Giselle and I said, hey, go post this on Angie's List and Home Advisor. And I want you to go identify candidates from sending this video, shortlist them if only, they got 5-star ratings and so forth, and was able to, shortlist and do all of that initial legwork, right? So you can probably think in your own business and your role, right? What are the death by paper cuts, the little things, even in your business function that are like this, that you can, have somebody offshore wise to kind of support you with, right? Outside of the core, operations, marketing, sales function, right? And then she started doing all of my travel and bookkeeping, or my travel and management of hotels and so forth. This is a screenshot of when she was helping me. I was going down to San Antonio and I said, hey, just go search a bunch of the hotels. I was going to speak for the chapter down there and put them all in a short list. So I was able to just go and pick which one I wanted, right? So she did all the pre-work, right? Especially for international trips. It's amazing. And then email management. This is one of the biggest things that sucks the life out of all of us. This is one of the very first things that she helped me with is went in and started managing my email. There's a delegate status that you can do inside your business. And so you're able to go in and she can manage my email. There's different ways you can do it. And I got a whole guide I can share to anybody who's interested on it. But I got to where I didn't have to manage and she was responding to 80-90% of the email in my inbox. She knew how to respond or she put it into a folder if it's something I needed to respond to. So game changing in terms of just email management. If you don't want to do it for you personally in your role, right? If you've got email that's coming into the business, right? Whether it's customer service stuff or whether it's operational stuff, it's a great way to use an offshore staff that can kind of come in and play air traffic control, right? And one of the biggest elements is software maximization in your industry. So, whoever's, listening to this, no matter what industry you're in, right? There's software that's key to your industry, right? Whether it's ERP software or CRM platforms, right? This one platform, our Chief Martech, it does this infographic every year and it shows, we've gone from 3,500 software tools to over 14,000 from 2016 to 2024, right? It's a part of our world, but nobody is maximizing all the software in their business because they just don't have the time or resources, right? That question number 2 comes up a lot when we do that 2-question exercise. I wish we could maximize Service Titan. I wish we could maximize Litify. I wish we could maximize Service Trade. Whatever the platform is, that's a huge area of entry point we found because our staff learn it and understand how to squeeze all the juice out of the software in that industry and a lot of the features and capability that can help drive revenue or reduce costs that people just aren't touching, right? So it's a huge, huge impact. So a couple of specific case studies I'll share. So this is a natural playground company called Bienenstock, right? They're actually based out of Canada. This is John El Rahib. He's the CEO. What's their industry? And again, I'm going to share some case studies. May or may not be in your specific industry, but you can kind of relate to the challenges. They do engineering and construction, specialty construction, trade contractors. So did that 2-question exercise version with them, right? And identified what were their challenges, okay? So significant administrative burden that they were dealing with. So what came back was, right, just a sheer volume and variety of tasks across finance and sales and marketing and ops. And, particularly on the design side, where they were to design these playground systems were huge and heavy. And then on the financial side, invoicing, bill payments, reconciliations, financial reporting, right? You can imagine these are all things that fall into those 1 or 2 questions. What are things people need off their plate? What are things they're not getting to that could have an impact, right? And fast forward, right? Oh, and also gaps in sales and marketing support they were dealing with in terms of lead generation, CRM management, sales tracking, marketing, then operational and project management challenges, related to purchase orders, document management, project checklists, manufacturing efficiency, right? So I'm sure a lot of you on the other side of this are hearing some of this and can relate. These are some of the exact challenges maybe, you've been navigating or dealing with, right? So, and last one, lack of design and asset creation skills. This is something else they were dealing with for graphic design, document templates. And this is what will happen. You do this 2-question process with your team, you'll be amazed at how much stuff can get unpacked, right? Of where the constraints and challenges are. So fast forward, they started with 1 and they ended up now with 5 staff with us, right? All plugging into those particular challenges and areas. Those are all constraint points they were dealing with, right? Then we got people plugged in across accounting and bookkeeping. Amy, who's a direct executive assistant for the seniors team. Patrick, who's a graphic designer. Justine, who does accounting and bookkeeping. And Bethany, who does technical support, right? So took all those constraint points, identified the roles and needs, trained them on it, fully managed them, and now they're working side by side, with their team at BN Stock, right? Side by side, having a huge impact for a fraction of the cost, right? Supporting those team members. And so this is exactly what the org chart looks like. And so this is what really kind of was eye-opening for everybody when I spoke at the COO Alliances. They're like, oh, so these people are working side by side, right? I mean, Bethany is supporting Josh. Justine and Fabs are supporting Joanne, who's the controller. We got, Patrick over here is helping, Catherine Riley, who's the director of marketing. And Amy is an executive assistant directly to John. So these people are integrated side by side, right? Working with them. And again, depending on, where you hire from and so forth, you're talking about, $15,000 to $25,000, $26,000 a year for a full-time integrated resource side by side without the additional, burden costs associated with it, right? So what's been the impact, right? These are the things that they've been doing. Financial administration. So once they unpacked all the constraint points, identified the roles to plug in, now what are they going to focus on to deliver value? Right. And I won't go through and read all the slides for you here. You can go back and this recording will be there. But these are all the things across financial administration that now our staff are handling. Invoicing and accounts receivable management, bill entry, right? Sales and marketing support, taking over and managing HubSpot, sales and tracking, client outreach, meeting and event scheduling, all this stuff now coming off of their existing staff so they can focus on other activities to help drive value, right? And the same thing across operations and project support, design and creative services, right? These are all the things now that once we identified, our team is absorbing and just helping drive their value. I think they're going on 4 years now, right? Using these resources and continue to add. So what's the impact? And in our business, we're fanatical about ROI. So from day one, when you engage somebody with us, we want to know the KPIs that we need to measure to know exactly how they can be successful for you, right? So for them, time saved, huge amount of hours per week in handling admin tasks, email management, CRM updates, cost savings, revenue growth, productivity gains, right? Huge impact across the board, for this business. And some of the ones I'm going to share further, we've got deeper metrics. They joined us even before we were getting even more detailed, KPIs, but just had a huge impact. But the biggest testament is they're still with us, going on 4 years later. Oh, and this is their ratings. So this is actually inside the rating system of how they rated their staff going back to 2021. We're fanatical about surveys. Tell us how we're performing. How's the staff performing? And this is exactly where we keep track of all the ratings, right? How do they perform? How are they responding? Are we maximizing their value, right? So it's all about measuring results. And look, I share part of this just because it's how we operate. But if, whatever path you go down, whatever company you choose, right, ask these kind of questions. I'm going to give you a top 10 list of things to ask if you go down the offshore path that can be helpful for you, right? Another one, Hometown Pharmacy, client that we work with in the pharmaceutical space. This is the director of finance, Kyle, who's one of our contacts there. But again, to give you some insights of their challenges, right? They were struggling with accounting, operations, marketing, logistics, and procurement. Now, this is a large multi-chain pharmacy, right? They got, I think 60, 65, locations. Did the 2-question exercise with them. Super straightforward. Came back with a ton of things, but boiled down to these 4 buckets, right? Key challenge they were navigating. So what we do? Identified immediately. We were able to put in Mary Joan, who jumped in and did accounting support for them. Angela, who plugged into operation support. And as of right now, actually, we're currently sourcing and now have actually hired these additional staff, graphic designer, someone to do warehouse procurement, because one of the things they were struggling with was data management between their warehouse and their retail store operations, and another person to do more accounting, right, across to support Mary Joan. And so this is how it's integrated, right? Inside their suites, their C-suite, right? Exactly with their staff, side by side, with them. So again, the idea is these people work side by side with your existing staff and employees, right? This isn't like a third, arm's length vendor, but people that are working side by side. Now we do have full call center operations, and there's tons of those that are out there if you need mass volume to do certain things. But this is working side by side, with those staff. Okay. And what's the impact been? Again, these are the key projects now. After 2-question, brought them in. These are the key projects we're able to tackle and support. Store operations, financial administrative oversight, document agreement management, meeting calendar travel management, right? All the clutter that creates constraint and growth in a business, right? And this is just in accounting and operations, right? Impact, 20% increase in operational efficiency. $100,000 annual cost savings in terms of overhead, improved budget management, 35% faster document processing, 25% reduction in scheduling conflicts that were happening because our staff was helping facilitate all the scheduling that was occurring and was getting missed, 15% increase in sales growth, right, across their retail operations for all their pharmacies. So again, and there's a bunch of other things I could dive in, but just shows you again, what can they do? How do you begin the journey? Where can they integrate and then measure the impact, right? This is a hotel operation called Aperture Hotels. Got a chance to engage and work with them. What were their constraints that they were dealing with, right? Finance and accounting, month-end close and reconciliations, manual invoice entry, operations and workflow management, centralized tracking for reporting, gaps in financial documentation, and technology, managing multiple accounting platforms, manual workload they were having to navigate. Again, the outcome of that 2-question process. So started with 1, now got 4 that are doing accounting, bookkeeping, and have actually been able to extend their capabilities in helping with the operational challenges as well, right? So that's how you integrate, identify the challenges, staff that plug into the operation. And so how's it integrated, right? So you got the COO, right? You got the director of hotel accounting. Now you got these staff working side by side, right? So Joy increases her higher quality of life. She gets to focus on other, higher value activities. And we got our staff that are doing accounting and bookkeeping and also doing operational support, right? So what's the impact been? All right, here's the key projects that we've taken on, integrating, working side by side with them, everything from month-end closings to accounts payables and getting all these things done that needed to be done in a more efficient, effective manner. And huge impact, right? Again, we're fanatical about measuring this. 100 to 150 hours per month saved, 5 to 10% higher profitability in revenue. 50 to 100,000 saved from preventing revenue leakage, right? 10 to 20K saved on late fees, 20, 30% fewer financial discrepancies, 30 to 40% faster month-end closings, right? 50% manual, fewer manual errors. Right? These are very sizable. Integrating side by side, working with their teams, huge impact for them. And I'll share here, and then we're getting close on time, but I'll share a couple more quick case studies. And this one's all about top line revenue for the most part. Some other things we're able to support them in. But this is Hyper Living. Teresa Roberts, Director of National Sales. They manufacture rugs in India and ship and then sell them through interior designers in the United States, right? What was one of their big challenges? One of the big ones was around sales, right? Ineffective lead qualification and conversion, leading to missed revenue opportunities. So at the end of the day, they had a bunch of dormant leads, either quotes in their system that hadn't been converted or customers that haven't bought in a long time that they were struggling to kind of keep, on top of. Because their staff, they were dealing with new deals that were coming in, or they were focusing on, the hottest, interior designers that were the most engaged in driving business. but also things around marketing, then operations and follow-up process, right? And customer relations, limited engagement with inactive clients, impacting long-term retention. So those are the outcomes of their 2-question exercise. You won't believe the impact here, guys. So these are our staff. They started with 1, right? Now they've got a total of 5 in the whole category of sales acceleration. So we were able to go in to their business, identify they had 3,000 dormant opportunities, right? Of old customers, dormant leads, things that hadn't converted. Went in, create a process, outreach with the messaging via email, via LinkedIn, via phone to all these dormant opportunities, guys. Generated $500,000 of business for them in just 6 months, right? And it's well over $1 million at this point, right? And this is working, again, looking at the org chart here, right? Working side by side. You got Amanda, Christella is our senior sales manager, and you got these 3 staff of ours working directly with them. Then the inbound lead team, right, with Maria. We got Tommy, Marielle, and Becca that are working side by side. You got Teresa, who's the director of national sales, and Asha, who's the CEO, right? So again, integrated side by side with their team within their org chart, right? That are fully managed, documenting all the processes across the board. And as I shared, crazy, right? 590,000 actually, to be exact, in revenue in the first 6 months, and over $1 million in revenue over the first year, just by engaging dormant opportunities, calling dormant contacts, prospect research, re-engaging accounts, support, gathering feedback, right? Unbelievable the impact, right? And then they identified other things that we could have impact across the way. Got a company that's in the yard turf care business. One of our staff, calling and following up on people that had engaged services, but upselling them. She has alone generated $100,000 in revenue for them in the first quarter of this year, right? Just by calling and upselling. Something was in that 2 questions. The second one, right? They weren't able to hire another full-time person at the current rates here, so they just weren't getting it done. But we filled that gap at the right rate who could come in and help support them, right? And these are other projects we started taking on once we started supporting them in the sales. PowerPoint, CRM, LinkedIn sourcing, Monster sourcing, Career Builder sourcing, helping in their whole HR, initiative as well. And then recruitment and talent acquisition, right? Cost savings, 5 to 10%, increase in revenue, related to that portion, $20,000 to $40,000, reduced administrative workload, right? I can go on. So you get the idea, right? It's substantial impact, right? And this is 5 Tracks. This is one of the companies. They're, acquiring outdoor service companies, right? And in the turf care space. And this is actually the one I forgot these guys we had included in here that had an impact. So Zach Howard, is their chief operating officer. And what were their challenges, right? So they're acquiring a bunch of turf care companies, rolling them up, plugging them into their central operations so they can grow this thing to 20 plus million, right? And so their challenges were struggling to find skilled, reliable, budget-friendly local talent to support them in operations, struggling to scale due to accountable team members, administrative challenges. So amazing. And I was actually with these guys not too long ago because of the impact, right? They are now wanting to go much more national and acquire even more companies starting in the Southeast and beyond, because now they can see how our staff are able to accelerate their efforts, right? This is another one of their challenges, lead generation, gaps in customer service, right? So this is the impact, right? So these are the 3 staff, and now they're about to hire several more with us. You got Rhea, who's doing all their accounting and booking, keeping reconciliation. You got Christine, who's doing all their content marketing strategy. And then Ivan, right? He actually does all the field operations, right? Field routing coordinator. What was taking 3 people across different divisions, Ivan is now doing. So when they do dispatch for their, I think 6 locations they have in 3 states, for their field, people that are going out to do turf care, he handles all the routing for them, right? All the routing of their trucks. So incredible. They just went on and on about the impact. And they actually shared a special story about Ivan, that they actually had a conflict happen among some of their internal employees in the United States. And because of Ivan's temperament, he was able to actually diffuse that particular situation, right? So, this is how this is integrated directly within their org chart, right? You got Nicole working with Christine. You got, Ivan working directly with the VP of Ops with Alan. And you got Zach, right? Rhea, supporting on the accounting, bookkeeping. And we're now actually taking it to the next level and helping them with Fathom, which is a software of how we can now help them take all the marketing or the numbers out of QuickBooks, put into Fathom. They can kind of do CFO type of reporting and content for them, right? So again, it's about taking it to the next level as well and supporting these businesses, not just, hey, here's your low-cost resource. Good luck with it, right? So, this is the impact, right? 2025, add 500 new clients. I mean, Christine has done an amazing job. I mean, she's able to, like I said, this is the one she's generated $100,000 in revenue for them just by calling and upselling people on their services, right? And then we were able to go and take and do dashboarding and do, Google Earth shots to increase their ability to do quoting more efficiently. Could take Google Earth shots to quote what was needed on the for the service area that they're managing, right? And again, this may not be your exact business, right? You may not be in the yard turf care business, but hopefully you're getting a sense. This 2-question exercise and identifying all these constraints, right? This helps to unpack whatever is going on in your business. As you can see, it's operational stuff, it's marketing stuff, it's sales stuff, it's all kinds of things that if you take the time to unpack it, you can see the impact, right? And one last one I'll share here. This is a super simple one. Aaron Thomas, he's a divorce attorney. Do that 2-question exercise. He was navigating, operational challenges with client consultations and legal tasks and limited time for strategic growth, trying to get content created and maintaining and updating his website and so forth, right? So he started with 1 and now he just has 2 staff with us, right? So I show the whole range, right? We've done startups to $300 million operations with just a few staff up to tons of headcount. He's got Rona and Laura, right? That are doing admin support and graphic design for him, and working side by side directly with him, right? So if you're a small operation in your business, right? There's even a solution here, for you of how it can have an impact and how it can scale, right? So it had an impact across operations for him and, revenue impact in his business in terms of driving revenue, cost savings, efficiency gains, just across the board. So I'm hoping you're seeing, an interesting byproduct. This is another client of ours. This is all his staff. They're in the home health and human services businesses in Virginia. They actually have 160 employees, but these are a lot of their key managers. And, he started with 1 with us, Chip Dodd, one of our amazing success stories, and now they've got 8 staff total with us. There's 6 here, but actually has 8 total with us. And it's amazing the cultural lift it's had, for their people, because we've had, clients send us a picture. This is one client, he shared a picture on the wall of all their staff that they work with and said, Brad, we actually have them on the wall. They're such an integrated part of our team, right? It's created a cultural lift for their people because a lot of them have never been to these third world countries, and it's given them an appreciation and a humility of understanding and working with these individuals, side by side and having, an impact, right? So this is an interesting byproduct of both gratitude and culture sensitivity, for existing staff. So as I close out, this is one other thing, this is a random example as well. Just again, I struggle because there's so many great ways to share how this can work. But when we were going to Outsource Access, I was like, man, I want to launch a physical, be the only walk-in location in the United States where people can walk in to physically kind of come interview staff. But how do I bring that to life? Well, knowing how to use Offshore, how cheap it is, I was able to have them do a 3D rendering of what a mock-up 3D location would look like of being able to kind of come into our business at Outsource Access. So I'm going to share you just a quick look of what that final outcome was here. Again, this might strike a chord with you of something that you could relate to. So I sent them a Google Earth shot, and I sent this to Jay Sells, my VA at the time, of a vitamin store, right? I sent a Google Earth shot and I said, hey, this is kind of the size and footprint. I shared with them kind of the area where we live around the Buckhead area here in Atlanta. And within 2 passes back and forth, this guy was able to do this entire 3D rendering so that we could put this on our website and showcase it as soon to come physical location, which I was planning to do if the pandemic hadn't hit actually. But this was able to show an exact 3D rendering. Y'all would not believe, right? We got this done, right, in like 3 days for like less than $100, right? This entire 3D rendering of this mock-up concept, right? So whatever business you're in, we had a painting client of ours, big paint client of ours. They painted grocery stores, and so they wanted to be able to kind of show an insight. So we started helping them, and so when they would do their quote and their bids, they would say, hey, decide to do a mock-up of what it would look like with a 3D rendering of painting your grocery store, right? And so nobody else did that. None of their competitors. It's all a commodity. They just sent over the pricing. They sent that over and blew their minds, right? And helped him win business kind of left and right. So just to give you one more idea of the types of things that you're limited only by your creativity a lot of times when you kind of get, engage this path, right? I'm sorry, I need to share my final screen here. So hopefully this is giving you some sense, right, of how to activate ideas, bring them to a win. Look, Are there going to be challenges along the way? Yes. What we've tried to do at Outsource Access and similar companies like ours is take all the challenge out of it by, holding your hand and working you through the process, right? Does our process cost more than others, right? A little bit more, but, there can be challenges, but we try to remove that with what we do. But even if you go direct and hire, right, there's going to be challenges, but it's the 85% rule, right? If you can get things 85 to 90% of the way done the way you would do it, and it gets out the door and things get moving forward, right? It's a win, win. And so, it's not all rainbows and unicorns, right? There can be challenges associated with it. But if you use these best practices and everything we've learned doing 6 million hours worth of work, you can remove a lot of those headaches, right? And the last thing I'll share is it's a win-win-win. When I first hired, Jacelle, a couple of months after hiring her, she sent me a picture of these shoes and she said, Brad, because the money that I'm making working with you, I was able to buy these shoes for these children who have to go, walk an hour back and forth to school every single day. And it connected the dots in my mind that, at the end of the day, it is a win-win-win, right? I mean, I'm able to get access to staff that I wouldn't otherwise. I'm able to pay them what they never would have been made before in their lives. So I'm able to grow my business and add employees actually in the U.S. They can grow their lives and their careers and sense of work and commitment, and even so that they pay it back in their local community. So I got a chance to speak at the United Nations headquarters, and we decided to implement. So every quarter, we survey our employees in the Philippines and ask what do they care about, and we've planted hundreds and hundreds of trees to offset carbon emissions. We've done more initiatives like this and bought shoes for children at schools and in different environments. We actually helped fund a cancer center recently that was about to be shut down that supports 200 children that get cancer treatment. So it's become a big part that we pay it forward across the board in what we do in the communities and kind of where we work. So hopefully that's been helpful for you as you've been thinking about this path. If you're sitting in the COO role, I'd love to hear your feedback. And again, I'll share the tools and resources here again with you and how to access those. But I'm going to share this to you as well. These are the 10 best practices that, look, if you're going to go down the path of offshoring, no matter which direction you go, we'd love to have the opportunity to work with you. But if you don't, these are 10 questions I would encourage you to ask, right? Are they incorporated? Do they hire them as full-time staff? Do they have a U.S. entity and maintain insurance, right? You can go down the list here. These are things I would highly encourage that I found are critical best practices and how we built our company. Before I launched Outsource Access, we had I worked with a bunch of offshore companies I was referring people to and realized what were the failure points, and I tried to build our business based on those failure points. So these are what some of those are. So I would encourage you ask these 10 questions to anyone or any company you're looking to explore and work with from an offshore standpoint. So hopefully you've been able to take from this, and if you still got your worksheet rocking there at the bottom, you'll see I've got the 5 key benefits, right? And this is where I'd like for you to put those. It's about overcoming the growth ceiling by being able to have affordable resources, ability to increase revenue, increase speed, reduce costs, outsmart the competition with an unfair advantage. I'm telling you guys, knowing how to do this faster and quicker than your competitors, you will leapfrog them. I mean, one of my good colleagues taught him how to do this. He's got 30 staff now in the Philippines in the commercial refrigeration repair industry. I mean, he's running circles. He gets private equity offers twice a month because they have no idea how fast he's growing because these competitors aren't even close, right? Then the unexpected, the internal cultural lift, right? By helping your staff be able to focus on what they focus on, it can be a lift for your own culture. And giving them exposure to people in another country, right? It just brings a lift and engagement. One of the clients that, we started working with, their staff were against it initially, right? Pushed back. Several years later, one of their staff ended up, getting cancer and supported them. And this is one that we taught them how to hire kind of, directly, but they ended up rallying and helping fund and support, along with what the company was providing, raised additional funds to support them and their family, right? So, and the last thing is stop losing money from dormant leads and opportunities in quotes. Like the one I shared with Hyper Living, right? There's so much money sitting in your CRM system of dormant opportunities that haven't followed up with or haven't closed, or quotes that you've quoted haven't followed up on. We have one client, we have $1.6 million worth of bids from last year. They were about to dive in and help them create a process to never allow those to go dormant again, right? So this is 5, but there's way more, right, of benefits long-term that you can imagine, in this journey. So I encourage you, right? What are your next steps? Go back to the top of this worksheet and look at what are some of your key challenges that you've been navigating, and pull that back up here again. What are the key challenges that you've been navigating? What are the divisions? Looking back at the mindsets, the key benefits, and going through this 2-question exercise. what are your next steps? What are you going to do in the next 30 days, right? That you could begin this journey. And I hope you'd be willing to explore this 2-question exercise, as you saw that I shared at the top here, and I'll share with you guys the template as well about how to access that. But let's begin the journey, right? Let's begin the journey. Come up with something that you want to kind of tackle in the next 30 days. Use that 2-question exercise maybe, or maybe you got something top of mind that resonated with you, some of the case studies that I shared that hit home. So you can at least begin it, put a date on it, and please lean on us. I'd be happy to help and support in the journey. If we don't work together, I love educating and supporting around this. I've helped probably 6 or 7 people launch their own offshore companies that are actually competitors now of mine, just because I believe of the impact this has on business and on the staff in these other countries. And then put down at least three automation delegation tools. Right, you saw me share a bunch on here, everything from Loom to Dashlane to ScreenPal. What are some automation delegation tools that you can explore and use that can be a part of this journey as well? And got a ton of those I'm going to share in that top 200 tools list. You can kind of take a look at that you can use to add to that punch list for you. So as I shared in the beginning, please, everybody here, email tools@outsourceaccess.com. Put COO in the subject line, and we'll be more than happy to send you the full COO's guide to leveraging offshore teams. We got an entire guide there that I think you're going to find is going to be very, very invaluable, that kind of walks through your whole world and what your challenges are. And so I'm actually going to pull up a quick view of it here. You guys can see. Got it here, and you can I'll give you a quick glimpse into this guide. Oh, it's taking a second here to pull up. But the COO's guide to leveraging offshore teams, it'll show you how we break it down from a COO's mindset of kind of what you're navigating and kind of what you're going through, and how to kind of look at it. Here it is real quick. So this is it, right? COO's guide to leveraging offshore teams. We'll talk about it, wide virtual teams, the hidden benefits, challenges, right? Things that you can engage and why. And then we'll talk about how to look at it in terms of a roadmap of offshoring and how to implement it, right? And then we'll kind of include in there the top 10 questions as well to evaluate when you're looking at companies to engage. Then I'll send you the 700 tasks that you can outsource by division, right? That we'll share with you. The top 200 tools to automate and delegate. The 2-question exercise, if you want to begin this journey, would love for you to do that process. I'll send you the template. There's a video of me in there that I explain how to do it. And look, if you are a part of a mastermind or if you're a part of a COO group, and you're looking for a deeper dive where I kind of ask questions to that group ahead of time to get your very specific constraints and challenges. And then I jump in and work on resolving those one by one in a virtual setting. I'm happy to do a complimentary one of those deep dive. And you got a QR code you can scan as well if you'd like to be able to get the resources that I shared. But again, you'll have that email, and you'll get that email if you email to tools@outsource.access. That's the same email. You can imagine we have a VA that manages that. But can get in touch, and happy to do any kind of speaking or deep dive sessions with forums if that'd be helpful for you. So thank you so much for your time here. I know we went over the initial allocated time as we look at diving into this, but I just love this content. I want to have tons of takeaway value for you, and just encourage. I would love for you to kind of go down the path with us. We'd love to do a complimentary discovery call with you, help you go through that 2-question exercise. We call the 2-question challenge. So if you just go to outsourceaccess.com, you can see on there where you can book a call with one of our kind of team members, do a discovery assessment. They can send those tools to you, or you can request those, the tools@outsourceaccess.com, and help you begin the journey, in the process. So thank you again so much for your time. Been a great experience being with all of you here today. We'll make this recording available as well, and look forward to your feedback. Please ping me, message me on LinkedIn, post down in the comments below as well. We'll be sharing a bunch of resources. Would love to get your feedback on how we can improve this in the days ahead as we continue to do this content. Take care, everybody.